Here's my audience. In 2017, 23 prisoners on death row were executed. The death penalty is a controversial topic that people can't determine if it's right or wrong, but it should be discussed because one day it might affect you. Someone you love may have their life taken too soon by someone else. Hopefully you or I won't ever have to experience this, but if this were the case, you should be aware of the different punishment that they deserve. I chose this topic because I've always been interested in the death penalty and criminology, and I wanted to learn more and explain why I believe that this is important and ethical to have in place. This is an ethical punishment because the criminals who committed these crimes did awful things, and it is fair that they pay for what they did. It isn't as unethical as society makes it seem, and it makes it impossible for the criminal to commit these acts again. Let's begin with the fact that these criminals did awful crimes, and this is a fair way for them to pay for it. This is a fair way to pay for these acts because the only punishable crime for death row is murder. The government website for the death penalty said that historically the death penalty was used for rape and other forms of crimes, including black defendants against white victims. Now murder is the only punishable crime in the United States. When the penalty was reinstated in 1976, the Supreme Court decided it was unconstitutional to rule the death penalty in a case where no death had occurred. Some would say an eye for an eye, meaning that if they take a life, then they deserve to give a life. The way that a criminal dies is most likely more humane than what they did to their victim. This is fair because the criminal has a right to a jury under the 6th Amendment of the Constitution. The government isn't forcing someone to be executed. They do have a choice that the public makes for someone. This is fair and ethical to me because they deserve to be punished for these acts. Now that we have discussed why this is a fair option, let's talk about how society and the media make the death penalty seem way worse than it is. I did some thorough research on this because I didn't honestly know the big difference. It is not as painful as most people believe. In every state that the death penalty is legal, the primary form of execution is lethal injection. I read many articles posted about awful stories about not dying immediately or having coughing attacks after they got injected, which I honestly did not know happened. However, in most cases, it is a painless death. Another thing I did not know was that the lethal injection consists of the same drugs they list that is used to put animals to sleep, just on a lesser scale. It consists of 3 parts that this is when they noticed where they're having problems passing away immediately. 8 states have switched over to a 1-type drug, which is more like an intense anesthetic that you would take before a procedure. And this image here shows how they actually execute someone. You can't really see it on the camera, but basically they use a 1-type drug and they have different backups in case the first one fails. Another dissimilarity with society and reality is that not as many people are executed a year as you would expect. Over the years, there was an average of about 265 people that were executed, but now it's more around 30 people per year. In 2013, there were 2,979 inmates on death row, and they averaged waiting there for about 5 months to 15 years. Some weren't even executed. They got away because their case was overturned, or they ended up dying of natural causes awaiting their execution. And this is just a graph from 2012 to 2016 that shows the decrease of people being executed on death row. The Green Mile is a movie that would perceive death row differently than what it actually is. They use an electric chair to execute, and they show how things could possibly go wrong. This is an execution chair that they used to use. People still believe that this is used, but in reality is actually banned from the United States as a form of execution. The Green Mile also makes it seem like people are executed weekly, and that someone replaces their spot immediately. And this may have been the case when the movie took place. However, that is not the case now. It is a very lengthy process to have someone executed. Since we discussed how society skews the death penalty, let's talk about the benefit of making sure a criminal doesn't commit these crimes ever again. The death penalty makes it impossible to commit murder again. The death penalty does not allow for parole, so someone cannot get out from good behavior. There's an option to have a life sentence without parole. However, this doesn't offer the same form of punishment that you receive with the death penalty. A life sentence is more of a business platform because the more inmates that are in a prison, then the more profit that a prison gets. Most cases ended up getting overturned, and this means that not as many people are executed on death row. A specific example of keeping criminals from doing this over and over would be Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a serial killer, and he killed over 30 people across America. He kept escaping from prison, and they drug out his trials because they honestly didn't believe that he did these. How could he possibly have done these acts? He eventually did get the death sentence, and he was executed by the electric chair. Since he got the death penalty, he was not able to get out again, and he was punished for what he did to women all over the country. Many lives were saved knowing that he couldn't go out and do this again because he wouldn't have stopped. We have now discussed all the reasons why the death penalty is ethical. Now, I know the death penalty is not ethical in everyone's eyes, but it needs to be discussed and looked into more. I believe the death penalty is ethical because it's a fair way to punish someone who is a murderer. It is not as bad as society makes it seem, and it makes it impossible for these criminals to continue doing the crime. One day, the death penalty might affect you, and you don't know how you would react if you were in this situation, or if you would feel differently if you experienced it firsthand. I would hope if someone I loved was murdered, there would be an accurate way to punish the killer. It doesn't bring your loved one back, but it does do justice for the awful crime that has been committed. Thank you.